Hello and welcome to the very first WrestleMania we're looking at here on the Wrestling Review podcast, where today we are looking at WrestleMania 9. Alright, here we go, our very first WrestleMania that we're looking at on the podcast today. We've got WrestleMania 9, which was live on April the 4th, 1993, and coming to us from Caesars Palace, Las Vegas, Nevada. Yeah, the build up to this has been a bit different than what I'm used to for WrestleManias, to be honest. Not really a lot of build up for quite a bit of what we're going to see today on the podcast, but yeah, obviously it'd be cool to see a WrestleMania, the very first one we get to look at. So we get to the arena, and our commentators for this event are going to be Bobby Heenan, Jim Ross, and Randy Savage. It's our very first time we get Jim Ross, who only just started with the WWF a couple of weeks before this, and it's his first pay-per-view. Strange that Vince isn't there for this one, but we open up with a video package with a voiceover from Vince himself, and he introduces Gorilla Monsoon, who's going to be our host for this evening. I keep saying this evening, but it's probably daytime. It's very light outside. It's an open arena. We see Gorilla in a toga with two guards, and Gorilla introduces Jim Ross as the newest commentator. Jim shows off his sandals, which, yep, Jim's wearing a toga, and hypes the two main events. We get some crowd shots, and then Jim throws not to Fink, but to Finkus Maximus. Fink then introduces Caesar and Cleopatra, who come out riding on an elephant. Caesar and Cleopatra are the same two who showed up at the Royal Rumble, so at least they're using the same people again. Jim gives us a history of elephants and Romans as they're making their way out. Julius Caesar and then Cleopatra walk around the ring, and then the Fink introduces the Macho Man, who comes out carried on what looks like a bed, but I'm told is a sedan, accompanied by Vestal Virgins. And Jim says that Vestal Virgins are pure. They do like to mention these Vestal Virgins quite a bit this evening, so we'll kind of skip over a lot of those. Bobby says that he was coming out with the Vestal Virgins, but that doesn't seem to be the case here. Macho comes out, and his toga is kind of non-existent. He's just wearing a purple and white suit, not really keeping up with the others. But to be honest, I can't really see Macho wearing a toga anyway. Macho gets a good reaction from the crowd, and he gets in the ring. Randy joins Jim on commentary and says that the grapes were great and the chicks were cool. Macho Man comes out with some very random bits of commentary this evening. He seems a bit off. Like, I quite like him on Raw, but here tonight he's just a bit, it's a bit odd, some of the stuff he comes out with. Out next comes Bobby the Brain Heenan, and he's coming out riding a camel. Not only is he riding a camel, but he is in fact riding a camel backwards. He's scared and screaming for it to be stopped. Bobby finally gets off the camel, and Macho Man lifts up Bobby's toga to show us his underpants. Jim says that he thought Bobby was meant to be with the Vestal Virgins. Randy says it's WrestleMania 9, it's time to lock and load. Again, just random stuff from Macho on commentary. Bobby rips on Jim from being from Oklahoma, and that he is used to the animal smell. To which Jim replies, well, yes, but we don't have many camels back in Oklahoma. Again, something we'll see a lot, or hear a lot of tonight, is sort of Macho and especially Bobby ragging on Jim for being from Oklahoma. So after we get all that out of the way, we hear Shawn's music playing, and Fink introduces Shawn Michaels, but Jim wants to know who's that behind him. Bobby says it's Luna Vachon. No mention really of why she's here with Shawn, but there we go. Luna is making her WWF debut here by accompanying Shawn down to the ring. Tatanka runs to the ring, and then we see that Sherry is coming down to the ring. Not really with Tatanka, but certainly making her way down to the ring behind him. Bobby says that she's there to beg Shawn to take her back. Again, no build-up really to either of these two being here with either of these guys, just they're there. And Jim even mentions that she's no allegiance to Tatanka. So we're ready now for our first match of WrestleMania 9. It is Tatanka, apparently, with Sensational Sherry versus Shawn Michaels, apparently, with Luna Vachon. So here we go. It's the Intercontinental Championship match Once Shawn's taken off all his clothes, which does take quite a while, the bell rings, but Shawn is still taking off his clothes. Luna gets out of the ring and screams. This match, to be fair, has had a bit of a build over the last few weeks. Shawn starts with a takedown, and Bobby reminds us that Tatanka has beaten Shawn twice in the previous weeks. We get a wrist lock from Shawn. He bends Tatanka over backwards, but Tatanka powers back up. A tie up, and Shawn takes over with a headlock, gets a 2 count as they end up on the mat. Tatanka takes him to the corner, and Shawn goes up to the turnbuckle, ending with a back suplex from Tatanka to break the hold. A chop from Tatanka, followed by an arm drag and a drop kick. Shawn is upside down into the corner, and a chop from Tatanka takes Shawn to the outside off the apron. Sherry then goes over to Shawn as Luna looks on. Shawn tries to get back in the ring, but chops from Tatanka keep him on the outside. Shawn went for a sunset flip off the top, but Tatanka just kind of landed on Shawn, looked a bit dodgy. Tatanka with the atomic drop and back onto the chops again. Shawn lowers his head and Tatanka hits a nice looking DDT. Shawn then goes for a clothesline but hurts his own shoulder after Tatanka has been working on it for a while. Really good selling, I like that from Shawn. Tries to do an offensive move but hurts himself. Tatanka back to the armbar, and the pace of this match does then sort of slow down a little bit. Shawn whips Tatanka into the corner and goes for the shoulder charge, but Tatanka moves and Shawn's shoulder hits the ring post, which makes a nice noise as it hits that. Get a shoulder breaker from Tatanka and an elbow drop. Tatanka goes to the top rope and hits a chop, goes for it again, but Shawn hits the sweet chin music, which normally nowadays obviously would finish someone off, but it's just at this point called a crescent kick. And Shawn, it's strange to see someone coming off the top rope, Shawn hitting such a good sweet chin music, but it's just kind of a move. Shawn throws Tatanka to the outside, and Luna and Sherry square off, with Sherry being the more aggressive, I thought. Shawn now takes the time to shout at Sherry. Shawn with the standing dropkick gets a 2 count, and then a reverse chin lock from Shawn. Shawn then goes for a victory roll, and again it doesn't quite come off as well as it should have done, with both of them just sort of crashing to the mat. Shawn ends up on Tatanka's shoulders, and Shawn ends up on Tatanka's shoulders, and he drops Shawn down hard on his back and gets a close 2 count. Tatanka misses an elbow, and Shawn goes to the second rope and hits a sledgehammer, but Tatanka no-sells it. Another one, and same again, and again goes for it, but no, Tatanka now starts doing his own sort of hulking up, hits a couple of chops, and then goes to the top rope, crossbody, and gets a 2. Tatanka then slingshots Shawn into the post, and the roll-up only gets a 2. Shawn goes for the crossbody, but Tatanka turns it into a power slam, which looked nice. On the outside then, Shawn jumps off the apron and hits the steps, Tatanka moving out the way. Shawn was being counted out, so he grabs the ref and pulls him out. Tatanka hits a fall-away slam and goes for the cover, but the referee refuses to count, and instead he has disqualified Shawn. Oh no, wait, Fink says it was a count-out victory for Tatanka. Really not sure what happened there. It was a bit of a messy finish. It looked like, Shawn was getting counted out, so he pulled the ref out of the ring, which probably was a DQ, but then Fink says that it was a DQ. No, Fink says it was a count out, but the ref stopped. He wouldn't count the pinfall. It came off a bit messy, the end of that. Tatanka celebrates anyway, and Sherry claps on from the apron, but Luna attacks her from behind and slams her onto the outside, and then sprints to the back as Tatanka comes out to see to Sherry. After that, we go backstage to Mean Gene, where he mentioned the Headshrinkers are already on their way to the ring, and he brings in the Steiner Brothers. Scott says they are excited for their first match, but it will be one to remember. Rick says they will make Caesar proud. A bit of an underwhelming Steiner's promo, and to be honest, a bit of an underwhelming Shawn Michaels match. It started off well. I thought it's had a good opening sort of few minutes, but then it did slow down the pace a bit. Tatanka seemed quite good in that though, the best he's looked from what we've seen of him so far. Shawn already kind of working that Mr. WrestleMania, trying to put on a good match for the big show. It was alright. I didn't like the finish. It seemed a bit sort of out of nowhere and a bit odd. Not really sure why Sherry and Luna were there. We've had no mention of any of that, none of that on the build-up. But yeah, it was alright for an opener. So, as Fink mentioned, the Headshrinkers were already on their way to the ring while the Steiners were doing their promo. So we get down to the ring, and Jim uses Slobber Knocker for the first time on commentary. It was nice to see that he's already breaking out the Slobber Knockers. Scott's going to start off for us against Fatu. A tie up to start, and Scott hits an arm drag. Scott takes down Fatu and locks in an armbar. They trade big right hands, and Scott hits a big clothesline that spins Fatu around. The Headshrinkers throw both the Steiners to the outside. Both Steiners then on the top, and both hit clotheslines from the top rope onto both of the Headshrinkers. Looked quite nice. Samu takes over on Rick until Rick makes the comeback and then tags in Scott, and he hits a big underhook suplex. Fatu gets a dropkick, and then Scott hits the ropes, and it looks like Samu goes to back body drop him, but he kind of holds him up and takes a couple of paces backwards towards the ropes, and Fatu then pulls down the ropes, pulls down like the top rope, so Scott gets dumped to the outside head first in a really, really nasty looking spot. That did not look nice. I'm not sure what they were going for, if that was the intention, but it came off as another kind of botch spot that, yeah, really looked like it could have ended nastily there for Scott. Afa then hits Scott in the back with a cane. I don't know how Scott is getting up after that. Fatu throws Scott back in, and now both Headshrinkers take over on Scott. Fatu with the headbutt off the second rope, a double headbutt from the Headshrinkers, and Scott is in trouble. Scott tries to make the tag, but Fatu kicks him to the outside. Samu sneaks around and runs Scott into the ring post. Back inside, Scott slams Fatu head first into the canvas, but he forgot he was Samoan, so Fatu gets right back up and kicks Scott square in the face. Really nice. I guess we're calling it a crescent kick from Fatu there. The Headshrinkers work Scott over for a while now, and the crowd are fairly silent. They started off okay, but yeah, I think they've lost them. They need something to get them going again. They react to some spots, but they aren't really building to a hot tag. They just don't seem to care as Scott makes a comeback. Samu with a hard chop and a headbutt. Samu goes to the top rope and misses the flying headbutt this time. In comes Rick, and the crowd does react to the tag, but not massively. Rick with a couple of clotheslines and then tries to hit the Headshrinkers' heads together, but has he not watched the rest of this match? Has he not watched any of the Headshrinkers? They're Samoan, they have hard heads apparently. So they just both headbutt Rick, which was kind of funny. Fatu gets Rick on his shoulders, and Samu then goes to the top rope. In another horrible looking spot, Rick catches Samu and power slams him off Fatu's shoulders as he comes off the top rope, but they kind of just crash to the floor, and yeah, again, very nearly on Samu's head. It looked cool. It was great that they did that, but again, another one that could have ended so differently. Scott tags back in and hits a belly to belly before turning around to a Samu super kick. Scott hits the Frankensteiner on Samu, and yet another move where it looked nasty. It looked like Scott hit his own head hard on the mat again. Scott gets the cover though, 1, 2, 3, and the win for the Steiner Brothers. It was a hard-hitting match with not a lot of crowd response and some very nasty-looking bumps that could have very easily ended differently with some nasty injuries. Thankfully, everyone came out of it okay, I think, and yeah, not a bad match, but again, kind of a nothing match really. We go backstage, and Mean Gene this time has Doink the Clown with him. Doink has defaced the bust of Julius Caesar. We see some clown face paint on him. We see a clip of when Doink ripped his own arm out of the socket and attacked Crush from behind with it. A bit of a Doink promo, but again, as with everything so far, nothing really too exciting. We are ready for our third match of the afternoon then, which is Doink the Clown versus Crush. Crush comes out first and seems to get a fairly decent response actually. Macho says that Crush has fully recovered from the concussion now. Doink comes out second and gets lots of thumbs down from the crowd. Doink squirts Crush with water from his flower, and Crush goes after him on the outside and hits a slam on the floor and into the ring post and railings before Crush throws Doink back into the ring. Crush powers up Doink and throws him into the corner. A hard whip to the corner, and Doink goes outside and pulls out Crush, but his punches have no effect. Doink into the ring post again, and now begs off back in the ring. A neck breaker from Crush and a snapmare. Good sort of fast pace to this opening so far. It's kind of what you'd want in this situation, with Crush really getting the upper hand. He's been concussed by Doink, he's been beaten up. It's good to see the babyface come out strong and really start taking over. We get a backbreaker from Crush, and Doink is yet to get started really in the match. Doink hangs up Crush, and Doink goes to the top rope, and even the announcers mention how close he was to falling off as he tries to hit Crush from the top rope. Doink to the second rope, and then to the top with punches to Crush. Seen a bit of a different style from Doink here than what we've seen on Raw. So whereas we've normally seen this real sort of technical, we're seeing quite a different style, bit more from Doink. But again, he's not really had much to do. He's just been beaten up quite a lot by Crush. We get a pile driver from Doink, which looked good. To say Crush is quite a bit bigger. Always looks a bit off when the smaller man's doing the pile driver to the bigger man, but yeah, came off okay. Doink hits a slam and goes to the top rope again, and Crush gets a foot up. Doink off the second rope, but Crush catches him and hits a power slam. Crush knocks Doink to the outside, and Doink tries to crawl under the ring, but Crush throws him back into the ring and hits a military press slam. Crush gets to the head squeeze, but Doink manages to get to the ropes as they break the hold, and the ref somehow then gets knocked down. Doink tries to go under the ring again, but again Crush pulls him back out. Crush hits a spin kick and locks in the head squeeze again, but now another Doink comes out from the other side of the ring and hits Crush with the cast again. The original Doink holds Crush, and the new Doink hits him again with the cast. The Doinks do a mime routine as they laugh at each other. The new Doink goes back under the ring. Doink covers as the referee comes to and counts the pinfall. You think that's it? Doink's won, but another ref runs down to the ring and tries to explain that there was another Doink under the ring. So both referees look under the ring, but they can't see anything. So that's it. Yeah, Crush has won. Sorry, Doink has won. And that's it. Yeah, it was a bit odd. So the referee came down, saw the messed up finish, pointed it out to the ref, and he didn't do anything about it. But there was definitely another Doink, and the announcers play it as though, was there another Doink, or was it an illusion? And then they start talking about David Copperfield and magic. No, there was just another Doink. We go to Todd Pettingill now in the crowd, and he is in his toga. Apparently he's taking a vote on if there were two Doinks or it was all an illusion. He tries to talk to two Japanese photographers. The first wants to talk about Yokozuna, and the second one just laughs. He says Las Vegas is number one and Yokozuna is number one. Todd goes further into the crowd and says that he was covered in beer. We hear Razor's music hit, so we go back to the ring. And it is the time of the evening where we're going to get Razor Ramon versus Bob Backlund. No build-up whatsoever for this. Didn't know this was happening at all. Razor comes out for a match with no build. To think Razor was in the... You'd kind of call it the main event. He was challenging for the title at the Rumble, and yet here he is in a match with Bob Backlund for no reason whatsoever. So Bob comes out again to no music, and Jim Ross mentions that this is the first WrestleMania, but nothing about his past, which they've kind of been building up. Bob wants a handshake and Razor refuses. Razor pushes Bob into the corner a couple of times. Bob uses his speed to take Razor down with a couple of leg sweeps. Bobby the Brain mentions he's 43 years old and has been away for 8 years before making his comeback. Razor with the slam and kicks to Bob while he's down. They trade slaps in the corner as Macho Man tells us that at WrestleMania brunch this afternoon, Bret Hart was knocked out by Lex Luger. And I thought that was really interesting that they just dropped that randomly into the conversation. We didn't start with that. It's not been a thing that's been built up. Just Bobby mentions it here. We get a hip toss from Bob and another, which looked good. Bob hits a underhook suplex and then hits a big atomic drop and slingshots Razor back in, but Razor gets a quick roll-up for the win. It was a very quick match that did nothing for either Razor or Bob. Bob's looked good the few times we've seen him on Raw, and Razor is better than just a quick match at Mania. You know, he's gone from the title match to, a quick match there with Bob. It wasn't good for either of them. Wasn't a good match. So we go back to Mean Gene, and he's with Money Inc., the reigning tag team champions. Gene thinks that the titles are in jeopardy. We get a look back at Raw where they attacked Brutus with the briefcase. I always want to keep saying the beef case, but no, the briefcase. Ted says that they are in their own backyard and that you don't take a dog on in its own backyard. IRS says they will remove the mask Brutus is wearing and smash his face. He also mentions that Hulk had an accident coming out of the gym. So then it's ready for our first of our co-main events that we've been told about. It's Money Inc. versus the Mega Maniacs. Fink announces the Tag Team Championship match and Money Inc. make their way to the ring first. We get Hogan's music and red and yellow smoke in the aisleway. I wouldn't say the crowd go wild, but there's certainly a reaction to Hulk that nobody else has had yet. And yes, as he comes out, we see that his eye really is looking bad. It's stitched up and very swollen. As soon as they get in the ring, Ted and IRS attack, but Hulk's music just keeps playing and they fight back and throw both IRS and Ted out of the ring. Hulk rips his shirt and poses with his hand to his ear, and Brutus just kind of stands there. It's at this point that we see Hulk's eye looks really bad. They take ages to get the match started, and finally Brutus starts out against IRS. IRS takes Brutus into the corner and tags in Ted, who delivers chops and whips Brutus into the ropes, catches an elbow. Hulk tries to come in, but that just lets Money Inc. double team Brutus. Ted comes off the second rope and Brutus is caught in the face, but Ted hurts his own hand on his mask. Ted smacks Brutus's face into the turnbuckle repeatedly, but again, no effect. So Brutus does it to Ted as the crowd start counting along to 10. Tag to Hulk, and again, a good reaction as he comes in and delivers 10 punches to Ted in the corner. Hulk went to the ref as he tried to get him to stop. He doesn't hit him, but he goes to try and hit the ref, which is a bit odd. Hulk starts hitting Ted again in the face, and as the ref asks him to stop, Hulk threatens to hit him again. Brutus back in quickly to slam before tagging Hulk back in. Lots of punches from Hulk so far, and then an eye poke to IRS, and Hulk and Brutus pose in the ring as Ted and IRS start to walk to the back. The ref has a word with Finkus, and he tells us that if they don't get back in the ring, they will lose the match and their championship. Which, a bit odd that the referee can just decide that in the middle of the match, which isn't the usual rule, but there we go. Apparently this referee has the authority to change the rules. We seem to then get a fast count from the ref as they get up to 8. Bobby is incensed that they are making up the rules as they go, and Ted and IRS just get back in the ring before the 10 count. Ted takes Hulk down and IRS starts choking Hulk with the tag rope on the outside. Brutus starts to come in and distracts the ref while Money Inc. double team some more. Ted locks in the $1 Million Dream in the middle of the ring and Hulk starts to go down. Hulk looks as though he is out and the ref checks on him, but what do you know, he keeps his arm up on the third drop. He starts to Hulk up, but Ted keeps it locked in. Brutus comes in and locks in the sleeper hold on Ted while IRS distracts the ref. The whole tag team scene is a bit odd to me at this time. There's double teaming by faces, there's refs not seeing heel tags. The ref turns around and starts to count both men down. He gets to 9 and Hulk does the Undertaker sit-up, which even Randy calls out. Hulk then tags Brutus as Ted tags IRS, punches from Brutus and a high knee, atomic drop, and Ted goes out. Another couple of rights from Brutus and he goes off the ropes. Ted hits him in the back with the case. Ted tries to take the mask off Brutus and this goes on for a while. He finally does it and he gets the mask off, which makes Hulk mad. They start punching him in the face and Brutus looks, completely out of it. He hits the ground and then remembers to sell the face. He gets whipped into the ropes, but he ducks and comes back with a double clothesline. He locks in the sleeper on IRS from behind, and Ted knocks them down, and they took down the ref too, so they all fell over. At this point, after all the double teaming and sneaking in and out, you'd think they'd all just get in the ring and fight, but no. With the referee down, Hulk still stands on the apron waiting for a tag. So Brutus tags Hulk in, and Ted tags to IRS to come in. So yeah, again, the referee's down, but yet we're waiting for tags. Anyway, Ted gets in, Hulk with the big right hands and a big boot. It looked like he went to do the same to IRS, but he caught an elbow instead, sort of low down. He hits IRS and Ted in the face with the mask of Brutus, but the ref's out. Brutus, for some reason, also comes in to cover IRS. Yep, so we've got Hulk covering Ted, Brutus covering IRS. Jimmy Hart comes in to wake up the referee, but he can't. So Jimmy takes off his jacket, turns it inside out, and it's got black and white stripes, so he counts the three and gives the belts to Hulk and Brutus. Another ref comes down to check on the original ref and then raises the hands of Ted and IRS, and Finkus Maximus announces that by DQ, Money Inc. win the match and are still the champions. Hulk goes after the new ref, but Ted and IRS attack. They're dumped out, so Hulk and Brutus go after the new ref again, but Jimmy's asking them not to do it, but Jimmy then throws the referee out of the ring. A very, very strange ending to this match. I guess what it was they didn't want to put the tag straps on Hulk and Brutus. I guess they knew Hulk wasn't going to be around, so they didn't want to make him tag team champion, or they just didn't want Hulk Hogan being tag team champion. It doesn't seem right. But then, how do you end the match? Do you just have a DQ? Do you have a... You've already ruled out the count out by making them come back. You can't have Hulk and Brutus go over clean because then they win the titles. So we end up with this. Yeah, it was odd. Jimmy counting the three. They get the belts, but then there was a DQ somehow. Anyway, yeah, Hulk's music starts playing and they're posing in the ring. Well, Hulk's posing and Brutus struts, and he tries to get Hulk to strut as well. Hulk decides he will do it, so they both strut, and then Hulk poses with the classics. Bobby points out that they are stupid for posing, that they lost the match, and they didn't win the titles. He has got a very good point. Hulk goes to leave again, but Jimmy and Brutus bring him back in. Hulk then notices the briefcase that Money Inc. left, and they open it up and see that it's full of papers, a brick, and some money. Hulk seems very happy with that and starts kind of... I think of the best way of describing what Hulk does with that money. He dances around, wiggling his hips, shall we say, with the money. Hulk then starts handing the money out to the fans in the front row. We go to Todd in the crowd again with Natalie Cole and the CEO of Caesar's Palace, Dan Reichart. He talks about the past events and how good WrestleMania has been. Todd asks for a deal on his room, which he doesn't get because they kind of just end the interview. All this time, Hulk's music was playing. They were still posing in the ring. I don't know what to make of that, really. It was not your typical Hulk Hogan match. It was... They could have done so much better. I think it was a bit of a letdown. I mean, it had co-main event status, but we've only had a few weeks build up for it. Hulk's hardly been on Raw outside of a few interviews that we saw. You know, it was what it was, but yeah, it wasn't great. We go backstage again to Mean Gene, who is now with Mr. Perfect, and he mentions Lex Luger's arm and how he knocked out Bret Hart. Perfect gives a decent promo, but then fluffs his lines at the end when he can't say the narcissist and tries to call him the Lexicist. I get the feeling these promos were pre-recorded, so I don't really know why we couldn't have had a redo of that one, but anyway, that's how we chose to keep it. They maybe were live, but they didn't come across that way. We have up next Lex Luger versus Mr. Perfect. Lex comes out accompanied with some ladies in gold bikinis that all three of the commentators seem very keen on, shall we say. The ladies hold up mirrors for Lex to look in and pose, and they shoot fireworks out of the top as he's posing in front of them. Mr. Perfect's music hits, and he gets quite a good reception, actually, like one of the best of the night. They talk about what Lex did to Bret again at the brunch, which we don't see any clips of, we just hear about here and there throughout the evening. We start with a stare down and a lock up to start before they trade wrist locks. We get a dropkick from Mr. Perfect and Lex goes to the outside. Back inside and Lex gets the advantage and rams Perfect into the top turnbuckle. Perfect takes back over and hits a nice attack to Lex's leg. Perfect now focusing on the leg. Hard chop from Perfect gets the crowd going. Two hard whips from Lex sends Perfect into the corner. Lex starts working over the lower back with forearms and shots to the back of Mr. Perfect, and then a backbreaker. Goes for the cover and gets a 2. Lex looks like he's out of breath here, and to be honest, hasn't really done much or gone that long yet. Lex goes for the pin with his feet on the ropes, but the ref sees it. We get a power slam from Lex, but Mr. Perfect gets a shoulder up. More and more Bobby and Macho Man seem to just be getting at each other. Bobby mentions how he used to manage Mr. Perfect, but no real mention of him bringing in Lex, and that their history, it seems to have been dropped somewhat since the Royal Rumble, when Mr. Perfect and Lex were sort of going to feud before they actually did, with Bobby bringing Lex in to feud with Mr. Perfect. We haven't seen any of that. We've only really seen Lex a couple of times, if that, on Raw, and Bobby's not been with him, so I guess, yeah, that's part of the story, that part of the angle's been dropped. We get a back body drop from Mr. Perfect, and he slingshots Lex into the turnbuckle. We get a whip and a punch, and a Perfect gets a 2 count. Mr. Perfect goes up for 10 punches, but Lex breaks it up after 3, but Mr. Perfect comes back and gets another 2 count. The fans facing the camera now seem to be struggling with the sun in their eyes. It's coming down lower, and yeah, they seem to be struggling a bit. Mr. Perfect with a top rope dropkick, a backslide attempt, but Lex gets to the ropes. Lex reverses and gets a backslide of his own, but Mr. Perfect's feet and legs are clearly in the ropes, but the referee doesn't seem to see it, so he still counts. Lex hits the forearm after the bell and knocks out Mr. Perfect. Lex walks off to the back and Mr. Perfect is left laying in the ring. Mr. Perfect wakes up and we follow him to the back, and he finds Lex talking to Shawn Michaels. Mr. Perfect goes after Lex, but Shawn attacks and he's held back by officials and referees. Bobby laughs and Randy gets out of his seat to face off with Bobby. It was another match where the crowd didn't really seem that into it. It wasn't great. Yeah, clearly Lex's feet were in the ropes, but the referee counted it. Mr. Perfect then took the forearm after the bell. Yeah. We see after the match, obviously, with Perfect going after Lex in the backstage area, that we're looking like we're going with a Mr. Perfect Shawn Michaels feud coming out of this, which I guess cool. We're setting up the next match already. But yeah, it was a bit odd. Bobby and Macho Man seem to be really getting at each other, and like I said, it kind of took away from it a bit with their bickering. But then we go to Gorilla, and he says that the Undertaker is still to come, and the champion Bret Hart is to face Yokozuna. It's a bit strange that Gorilla's only bit on this card was to introduce Jim Ross at the start and then to announce the matches we have left. We go to Fink, and he introduces Giant Gonzalez, who seems to have lost the fur off his costume and is now just painted on. But where he had hair pants, he now seems to be naked with a hair strip at the front. It's an interesting look, to say the least. It is now time for The Undertaker versus Giant Gonzalez. Undertaker comes out with Smoke and Paul Bearer. Taker is carried out on a funeral chariot with a vulture. Taker gets in the ring and hands off his coat and hat. It looks strange that Taker's coming out in the daylight after the beatdown of The Undertaker at the Royal Rumble. It's going to be interesting to see how this one plays out. Giant Gonzalez comes out and he does actually tower over the Undertaker. It's quite impressive. Taker hits a few shots and knocks down Giant Gonzalez. Giant Gonzalez gets a few shots and he knocks Taker down, but he fights back up and gets Taker around the throat. Gets taken to the second rope and he hits Gonzalez by the throat. Yeah, this match, the fact that I'm having to relive it. We get a low blow from Gonzalez, but again, Taker fights back with the fists, and then Undertaker hits Old School. Taker stomping and kicking Gonzalez in the corner. Chin lock from Gonzalez, and Taker goes down on one knee. He fights back up and breaks the hold, but Gonzalez throws him to the outside, clubs and chops to Taker, and he rams Taker into the steel steps, and then Undertaker knees first into the steps. Paul Bearer holds up the urn and Taker is back up on his feet. Gonzalez headbutts Paul off the apron and Harvey hands Gonzalez something. They say it's chloroform, but it really isn't obvious what's happening as it's such a bad end to the match. That's it. Yeah. The referee gives Giant Gonzalez a 5 count and then DQs him. Why does this get a 5 count? He's clearly got a rag over his mouth. The referees come out and the officials and they try to check on Taker. They drag him out of the ring. Pat Patterson calls for more help and they bring out a stretcher. Giant Gonzalez hits a ref by the throat and gives him a chokeslam. As he's wheeled out, Paul's with him and his hand holds up the urn, but he doesn't move, and as they go back through the curtain. The crowd now start chanting for Hogan. I'm guessing not the reaction they wanted. Taker's gong goes off and he walks back down to the ring with Paul trying to stop him, gets back in the ring and hits some kicks and punches, and after 3 clotheslines, Giant Gonzalez goes down and rolls out of the ring. Security come out and escort Gonzalez to the back as we hear Undertaker won via DQ. I get the feeling that this isn't over, and that is not a good thing, because that match was bad. Like, seriously bad. How they thought that this was a WrestleMania worthy match, I do not know. It was painful to watch, and yeah, this has been built since the Rumble. This is in the era where there was only the big pay-per-views. This match has been built since the Rumble, and that's the payoff we get. A few kicks, a few punches, old school, and then a rag to the face of Taker. It was, yeah. We go back to Mean Gene again, and this time he's talking about the main event, and we look back at how Hacksaw gets squashed by the Bonsai Drop. The Bonsai Drop looks a lot safer than we saw the last time when he did it with the Jobber. We see the contract signing where Yoko attacks Bret and hits the Bonsai Drop and sits on Bret. You would expect at this point that we'd hear from Bret Hart or, in fact, Yoko, but no. We get Hulk Hogan wandering in, and Hulk gives an interview about the title match coming up next. Hulk says he's been with Bret in the locker room and that the Hulkamaniacs are with him, and that Bret is a Hulkamaniac, and that he wants Bret to watch Fuji and Yoko, but as he looked into the eyes of Bret Hart, he questioned the power of Hulkamania, and that's why he's issuing a challenge right now to Bret Hart or, and I quote, the Jap, for a title match. Whoever wins this will face Hulk Hogan. Hulk poses, and that's it. We go back to Todd in the crowd. Todd tries to take the mick out of a child, saying that he has Prince Charles's ears, and then he gets a couple of drunk guys who start fighting with each other. Why, on this pay-per-view, do we not hear from Yokozuna or Bret Hart? Why, the title match build-up, do we get Hulk Hogan, who has been nowhere near Bret or Yoko or the title since coming back? But yet here we have Hulk Hogan giving an interview on Bret Hart's behalf and then saying that he was concerned about the power of Hulkamania when he looked into Bret's eyes, so now he wants to challenge Bret or Yoko to a match, whoever wins. So if Yoko wins, what he's saying is Bret Hart isn't good enough to go and do it, so Hulk will have to go and do it himself. And if Bret does win, then Hulk thinks he's better than that and he should be champion, so he's going to challenge Bret. Why? It just makes no sense to me other than Hulk putting himself over. But why are we not hearing from the champion? I just don't get that. We don't hear from the champion at all. We hear about this attack earlier in the day from Lex Luger, but again, we don't see it. There's no footage of this. Bret Hart isn't mentioned or seen on this card at all. To be fair, neither's Yokozuna. Yoko's this big monster heel that we've been building up. He's got this guaranteed title match, the first time that's ever happened in the Rumble, and yet here we are at the pay-per-view, and we've seen or heard nothing from either of them. Anyway, Jim Ross plays up the size advantage that Yokozuna's going to have in this one. The bell rings, and here we go. It's time for the main event. Yokozuna's music hits, and he comes out accompanied by Mr. Fuji. Then Bret's music hits to a decent reaction, and here he comes. We finally see the WWF champion on this WrestleMania card. Bret gets in the ring, shows off the title belt, gets a pretty good reaction for Bret. He kisses the belt and gives it to the referee. He then goes to the outside and gives his shades to a fan in the front row. Yoko takes off his robe and throws salt at the floor. Yoko takes a sumo stance, and we get a great shot through his legs of Bret, and it just shows that size difference really nicely. Bret charges and hits a drop kick and hits some punches in the corner. Bret goes behind, but he can't get his hands around Yoko, like he thought that was going to work. Yoko tackles Bret and sends him to the outside. Bret tries to get back in and ties Yoko up in the ropes and trips him up, which was quite nice. Bret goes over the top rope and hits some fists. Bret goes up to the second rope, hits an elbow. The referee gets Yoko out of the ropes. Bret hits 2 clotheslines, but Yoko won't go down. 1 though from Yoko, and Bret is down. We get an elbow drop from Yoko and a slam, and Yoko hits a running leg drop on the crowd to start with a USA chant. We get a nerve hold from Yoko, and Bret goes down. Yoko whips Bret into the corner. Yoko charges in, but Bret moves and takes Yoko down, but only gets a 2 count. We get a side kick from Yokozuna, which was impressive. Man of his size and that flexibility. He takes Bret down again. We get a snapmare and another nerve hold from Yokozuna. He's starting to look a bit tired at this point, shall we say. We get another USA chant, and at this point Bobby points out that one of these men is from Japan and the other one's from Canada. Yeah, I agree, Bobby. Who are we chanting USA at here, really? Bret gets Yoko down and gets a 2 count. We get an elbow drop off the second rope again, which gets another 2 count. A pair of clotheslines from Bret, but Yoko gets back up. We get 10 punches in the corner. Yeah, we tried, but at 6, Yoko powers out and Bret rips off the turnbuckle. Bret reverses and rams Yoko into the turnbuckle. Bret locks in the sharpshooter on Yoko, but Yoko won't give up. Fuji gets some salt out of a bag and throws it in Bret's eyes. Bret releases the hold to rub his eyes, and Yoko gets the pin. And that's it. We have a new champion. Yokozuna is the new WWF champion from salt in the eyes. There was nothing after that. Fuji threw the salt. Bret released the hold, rubbed his eyes. Yoko got a pin. That's it. New champion. But it's not. If only it ended there. What we instead get is Hulk Hogan coming out, and he comes straight out and down to the ring to complain. He goes over to see to Bret. Fuji gets the mic and says that my Yokozuna challenges Hulk Hogan. Fuji says Yoko will put the title on the line right now. Hulk helps Bret to the outside and over to the guardrail, and Bret kind of tells him, yeah, go for it, go on Hulk, go and get him. So Hulk goes back into the ring. Now my first problem with this, one of my first problems with this is why would Fuji, after Yokozuna's just had a decent match with Bret and was in a bit of trouble when Fuji threw that salt, why would he now instantly want to put the title on the line against Hulk Hogan? If you want Hulk, fine, I get that. Go and attack him. If you want to say at a future time my Yokozuna will destroy Hulkamania, fine. But why put the title on the line after he's just had a match? Doesn't make any sense. Second, why is Bret being so, oh yeah, go and get him, Hulk? Like, these two have never interacted. We've not seen that Bret and Hulk are good friends, that he wants his mate to go and avenge him. It's just like, yeah, go on, Hulk, go and do that. So here we go. We've got Hulk Hogan versus Yokozuna, apparently for the WWF title. Hulk gets in the ring and Yoko clubs him as he gets back in. Yoko holds Hulk's arms as Fuji goes to throw more salt, but what do you know, Hulk ducks and Fuji throws the salt in Yokozuna's eyes. Fuji gets taken down, a clothesline, a leg drop, and that's it. Hulk's the new champion, and the fans are on their feet, and to be fair, there's a big reaction. Yoko is straight out of the ring, and Hulk is left to pose with the belt. Hulk looks smug with the belt as fireworks go off as he continues to pose and bring the show to an end. What an awful, awful, awful finish. I cannot stress enough how horrified I was to see Hulk Hogan pulling that smug, arrogant face in the ring, posing with the belt. It does nothing for Bret Hart and nothing for Yokozuna. So Bret is the babyface champion. We haven't seen him all night. We hear that he got knocked out by Lex Luger earlier in the day, but they don't really play that up as part of the match. Bret's fine. It's not really a thing. Yokozuna then is this monster heel that nobody has been able to beat, and we've had this whole build up with Hacksaw being squashed by him, that he's unstoppable, he's won the Rumble. What better way to have him either squash Bret? Okay, you maybe wouldn't want that because you've got Bret Hart, you don't really want to squash your champion, but he's up against Yokozuna, this monster heel that we're building up. Why not have a competitive match, but gets hit by a bonsai drop, loses clean? It's not going to hurt Bret. He's going to come back from that. You've then got this monster heel who can possibly beat Yokozuna. If you want to do Hulk in future, fine. Let's go with that. Let's go with a Hulk Hogan title win 3 months down the line at the next pay-per-view. Or build somebody else. Or build Bret trying to redeem himself, come back from this. Neither of those things happen. What we get is Bret Hart losing the match by salt to the eyes, and then our monster heel getting beaten by salt to the eyes, a clothesline, and a leg drop. And that's it. And honestly, if you could see, go and watch this. Watch the reaction on Hulk's face when he's there posing with that belt. He is so pleased with himself that he has somehow gone from being DQ'd and losing a tag team championship match, which, okay, there was some build for, to now somehow winning the championship. He's made a sum total of, 2 appearances on Raw, a couple of taped interviews, and that's it. Yeah. The whole WrestleMania card was a bit strange. We had a lot of DQ finishes there. We had a lot of non-finishes. We had refs getting knocked down and then not seeing finishes, so other people counting finishes. We had Doinks hiding under the ring and then not being seen. So if we just have a look back through the card, we've got Shawn and Tatanka, which ends with a DQ. Then we get the Steiner Brothers, the Headshrinkers, okay, clean finish there. Then we've got Doink, screwy finish with the other Doink coming out from under the ring. Razor Bob, clean finish. Then we've got Money Inc., Mega Maniacs. We get, again, a DQ finish. Then we've got Lex Perfect. Okay, kind of a clean finish, but not, because Perfect's feet were clearly in the ropes. Then we've got The Undertaker, Giant Gonzalez with the DQ finish. Then Yoko Bret, not a clean finish, is it? It's a pinfall, but it's not a clean pinfall. So kind of screwy finish there. And then Hulk Hogan, Yokozuna, again, we've got the salt to the eyes, clean-ish finish, but not really. You know, out of that, we had one match that just ended with no controversy, no DQ, no what was that. One match out of those 8, 9 if you include Hulk. One match where it was just a clean pinfall, and that was a quick roll-up from Razor, which did nothing for either of them. So, yeah, it's our first WrestleMania, so I can't say it's not a good WrestleMania, but it wasn't a good WrestleMania. Like, if that was my first one, yeah, let's hope they get better. Let's hope that both Monday Night Raw and WrestleManias get better, because, to be honest, that wasn't great. I think the match of the night would probably, if I had to give it to any of them, probably go to the opener, the Shawn Tatanka match. Tatanka looked quite good. Shawn looked quite good. Bit of a messy finish, but other than that, was alright. Yeah, there we go. That was it. WrestleMania 9, 1993, done. Let's see what happens storyline-wise coming out of this as we get ready for the next Monday Night Raw. We'll catch you then. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Wrestling Review podcast. Be sure to come back next time as we listen to another episode of Monday Night Raw. Please rate, review, follow the podcast, and don't forget to follow me on Instagram at TWRPod20.